Let us pray together. God of heaven and earth, before the foundation of the universe and the beginning of time, you are the triune God, the author of creation, the eternal word of salvation, and the life-giving spirit of wisdom. As we meet this day, we seek the presence of your Holy Spirit. Come as holy comforter and strengthen us. Come as holy teacher and instruct us. Come as holy light and lead us in the darkness. Come as holy truth and dispel our ignorance. Come as holy presence and guide us. Come as holy life and dwell in us. Convict us, convert us, consecrate us, until we are set free from the service of ourselves to be your servants for the world. In Jesus' name, amen. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, I declare this General Assembly duly constituted and competent to do any business which may come before it. Please be seated. I'm sorry. Okay, I want to say just one word about the prayers. A couple of people have asked about them. When I do prayers, I often use the resources of the Iona community because I find that their prayers are really quite lovely, but I always adapt them for my own use. So a lot of these are from the Iona community, but then some of them fairly heavily adapted by myself. I had at least one request for prayers. Send me an email if you want a copy and I can send you copies. Thank you. And we are at the Business Committee.
Thank you, moderator. Again, the Business Committee has a report from the Committee on Leave and Withdraw. It'll be up on the screen in just a moment. It's been moved and seconded, and the motion is before you.
So we have recommendation number 4 on leave to withdraw. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Thank you, moderator. If anyone has a request to withdraw, then please get those into us using the form by 5 o'clock tonight, and we'll have our last report at our evening Sederunt. If your request is only for the 10th Sederunt, which is tomorrow morning, you don't need to ask for permission to be not present. We still expect you to be present for that one. Everyone should be here. But if your request is only to be waived for tomorrow morning, you don't need to fill in the form and send it in to us. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to go back to the NIMC report. You'll remember yesterday we held it open because they were working on an additional motion. So whomever is presenting that, I call you forward. So that's the NIMC. Mary, or is that you going to be you? Okay. And we'll get the additional motion up on the screen. So can we have the additional motion for NIMC?
Moderator, we have an additional motion from the NIMC, and this is our proposal that the National Indigenous Ministries Council, in consultation with the Life and Mission Agency, the clerks of the Assembly, and others as needed, develop a model for the participation and consultation of Indigenous representatives at all meetings of the General Assembly and present this model at the next Assembly.
And can you name the mover and seconder?
Moved by myself, and I think Greg, no, not Greg, Stuart, will you, we didn't do that. Stuart Folster.
Stuart, are you there? And are you willing to second?
This is not on?
Yeah, it's on. 3 is on. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's on now?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, I second the
Thank you.
recommendation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is moved and seconded. Do you want to say anything more about that?
No.
So this came out of our discussions yesterday afternoon. Stuart, do you want to say anything about this? Microphone 3.
Yes, Stuart Falster, Presbytery of Northern Saskatchewan. I'm also a member of the NIMC. And so the NIMC will plan to meet and discuss this recommendation if it is passed. And we want to ensure that there are more Indigenous voices at General Assembly, at future assemblies. And so we hope that this will be one way to resolve that situation.
Thank you. I would remind commissioners that this is in addition to the motion we passed yesterday about every presbytery ought to work on Indigenous representation. So remember that too. Any other discussion, comments? Number 4, microphone 4.
Thank you so much, moderator. My question is that wording.
You need to give, I'm sorry,
Sorry,
can you name
Miklós
the
Szigeti Presbytery of Westminster. I'm sorry, Miklós Szigeti Presbytery of Westminster. So the wording of this motion is the General Assembly and present this model at the next assembly. I think it's not appropriate because next assembly is going to happen every year. So I think it is better to say it's going to model at the assembly of 2025.
2025?
Because if you leave the text like this, it's going to happen every year.
Right.
So we have to come back.
Yeah, the model would be presented next year. Is that?
Next year, 25.
Yeah, 25, right.
Yes. Sounds
That's fine. We'll take it to mean that. Thank you, Miklós. Microphone 3.
Yes, moderator. Greg Smith, Calgary, McLeod. Just for clarification, I think next assembly, I know there is some discussion about perhaps at some point going to a biennial. So the intention is really just that there would be a development of a model over the next year, and at the next General Assembly, the model would be presented for consideration. I do speak in favor of the motion. I think this came out of some of our discussion yesterday, and there seemed to be a bit of a movement of spirit here at the Assembly. And I think this is just a way of addressing some of the concerns that were raised yesterday and ensuring that we have a permanent Indigenous voice for consultation and participation at all future General Assemblies. So I strongly support the motion.
Thank you. Other discussion? Microphone 1.
Kathy Fraser, Grey Bruce Maitland. I applaud this and speak in favor of this motion, and I wouldn't change anything, but I'm just saying this might encourage presbyteries and synods. This model might also then be translated for presbyteries and synods to consider the invitation and the inclusion of the Indigenous voice at those levels of our courts as well.
Thank you.
So speak in favor.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, Yars, do you want to vote on this? You had voted on other things related to this? You're okay? Okay. Good morning, Yars. Commissioners, all those in favor of the additional motion? Any opposed? That is carried.
Thank you, moderator. The report as a whole.
And the report as a whole, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we move on to the Committee on History.
Good morning. Moderator, I am Reverend Jeff Ross. I am the convener of the Committee on History. I am not a commissioner to this assembly. Others will be moving and seconding the committee's report and recommendations. Our mover is Janet Taylor from the Presbytery of the Northwest, and seconder is Jennifer Geddes from the Presbytery of Vancouver Island. Moderator, our report is made up of consent recommendations. I'm not sure if they're going on the screen. HIS 1 through 7.
So here's the consent recommendation. Go ahead.
Sorry?
You have a mover and seconder you've already named. Okay,
Yes,
So this is ready to
Janet
go.
Taylor and Jennifer Geddes.
Okay. So commissioners, this would be the time if you want any of these removed from the consent agenda. We'll wait a minute, see if anybody makes their way to the microphone. Okay, seeing none, then this is before you. The consent recommendation. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Moderator, our report starts with the reminder of the command to go stand in the temple and tell the people the whole message about this life. This message is spoken by an angel, one of God's messengers to the imprisoned apostles, the leaders of the first church, the early church. And it's also a message that speaks to us today. Go and tell the story of God's promise and covenant, the assurance that in God's plan and purpose for all of God's children and people, there is hope for life. And this is also a call for us and an edict for us today. It's not a call to look back with nostalgia, to look back and to calcify. It's a charge to recall the past experiences of God's grace, love, and provision, of God's plan and purpose for us, and plans for a future of hope. It's a message that also includes instruction to inform and assure those today, to us, in the midst of turmoil and uncertainty and transition for this ever-changing present, so that we might hold fast to God, the God who has done great things in the past. But in freeing the captives, the angel also commissions them to go forward into the future to proclaim hope, the hope of life that can be found in God's promises from Abraham to Moses to Jesus. This is the commission of our committee, the Committee on History, and it is in this spirit we pray that our work has been done. Moderator, I would hope to briefly highlight 4 items from our report for the court. First and foremost, who knows what next year is? 150th, thank you, Brampton Presbytery, thank you. Next year is the 150th anniversary of the denomination. And the Committee on History is working hard on what we're calling the 150th anniversary project. And we are hoping to enlist your support and your help as we do this. We have been meeting and discussing. We had a wonderful meeting with Victor Kim, the Clerk of Assembly, who gave us a very challenging message to go forward. And coming from that message, we as the committee adopted a faith-forward model for what we are going to be doing. We are looking to find ways to commemorate projects that celebrate the past, the present, and the future. So the underlying theme of our hope, of our plans, is to celebrate the denomination's witness in a variety of faith-forward ways. Come and see, and I'm praying you will come and see next year and be part of the celebration, because we are indeed hoping for something to show you that will be worthy of celebration. I know, because I've been in enough congregations and visiting enough congregations and being part of enough assemblies, that every one of your congregations has a story, has something worth telling the rest of us about. I don't know how many have made it to the Committee on History's resource table. We still seem to have a lot of supplies. Everyone else has been depleted of their lifesavers and candies and various other things. But on the table, in the middle of the table, is a half-page sheet. And on it is a request for you to send us your stories. We invite you to pick this up. You can then use the email that is there, pcc150book@gmail.com. We are hoping to do a couple of things in multiple platforms. We want to have a book with your stories. We want to then provide material which will be online for you to use in your worship services. And we are also hoping to have a presentation during the course of next year's assembly. So help us share your story by using this email and that piece of paper. Secondly, I want to acknowledge that the committee has found a new editor for the Presbyterian History newsletter, and it's my pleasure to announce that Mr. Ian McKechnie was appointed as the new editor of this newsletter. He has big shoes to fill, but the Committee on History is confident that Ian will not only live up to the past expectations, but also, as we've just experienced over the course of this year, he is working very hard to make it his own. And we hope that you will continue to use that resource in your congregation's life and history. We also have, under our oversight, the Presbyterian Heritage Center, and I've invited Marilyn Repchuk, who is the convener of the Heritage Center's Advisory Committee. Marilyn, if you don't know, is not a real fan of public speaking, but I want her to be able to tell you what has been happening with the Heritage Center. Marilyn.
Thank you, Jeff, and moderator and people, friends. We bring greetings on behalf of the new Heritage Center, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. The wording on our flyer states, "History lives in our new home." And in 2025, we will set a date and a time, and you will hear about a dedication and grand opening, along with an updated video for everyone to see across the country. The advisory board has worked hard along with Ian Mason, our curator. Ian Mason is here. Thank you, Ian, for all of your work you've done to get everything from the museum in Toronto to the museum, or the new Heritage Center, in Carlisle. We've renovated and taken 2 years to renovate the sanctuary in the Heritage Center in Carlisle Church. There were 3 phases, and the last phase includes an 1850s chapel. Please look at our display and you will see the transition from the old museum in downtown Hamilton. That's where I live. Downtown Toronto to the Heritage Center in Carlisle. It's been a challenge. It's been a gift for us as an advisory team to see the finishing product. Now we have to take the next year to organize and set up. So the work that's been done is immense, and it's still a lot of work ahead of us. You will remember the National Museum in Toronto, and we look forward to our new space in Carlisle, above London, just above London, in the municipality of North Middlesex. So we are excited for you to visit in the future. It won't be long before we get there. And as Jeff mentioned, 150 years of PCC working together and in the name of Jesus Christ and for the sake of history. And we will update you. Watch for sharing on pcheritagecentre.ca. Moderator, there's one more thing that I would like to take the opportunity to say, that Jeff Ross, as secretary, I'm secretary to the Committee on History, and as secretary, I've worked with Jeff very closely over the last 6 years as convener of this committee. This is his last General Assembly to present. And Jeff, we want to say 6 years, we thank you for your graciousness, for your leadership, your support, your wisdom, but most of all for being you. Thank you, Jeff. We will miss you immensely, and I hope you like chocolate.
Oh my gosh. Well, only my mother has said thank you for me being me, but thank you. Moderator, we have one of the components of our report are the awarding of history book prizes. We had anticipated being presenting in the afternoon, and so our recipients will be coming this afternoon. So we will leave the report open for that. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we are to the trustee board. Microphone 4, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Monica Beretki-Farkas, Presbyterian of Hamilton. And in the report, we heard that Ian has to fill big shoes. And I would like to say thanks to Peter, because in the report, we can read that he worked as an editor of Presbyterian history for 30 years. The Reverend Peter Bush, he's just that.
Right.
Thank you, Peter, for that 30 years.
Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. I am Peter Bush, the convener of the trustee board of the Presbyterian Church in Canada. The movers for the consent docket, two motions in consent docket. The mover is Corey Stewart, and I am the seconder.
Commissioners, you have the consent docket in front of you. Is there anyone seeking to remove one of these from that recommendation? Seeing none, let's vote on that consent recommendation. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Moderator, one of the tasks of the trustee board is when a congregation is dissolved, and I'm using that word in distinction from amalgamation, when a congregation is dissolved, the property comes into the hands of the trustee board for us to dispose of. And between March the 1st of 2023 and March the 1st of 2024, the congregations I'm about to name have been dissolved, and we have either sold their property or are in the process of doing so. In these congregations, people worship the triune God of grace, met Jesus Christ in the word preached, experienced the Holy Spirit poured out in their lives and in the community. In these congregations, children and adults were baptized, couples were married, communion was celebrated, and fellowship was enjoyed. And so we remember these congregations. St. Andrew's Church, Hagersville, Ontario. Rockland Community Church, Rockland, Ontario. Knox Church, Bellafield, Manitoba. Alberton Church, Alberton, Ontario. Knox Church, Briarcrest, Saskatchewan. St. Andrew's Church, Swift Current, Saskatchewan. Oshawa Korean Church, Oshawa, Ontario. Kitimat Church, Kitimat, British Columbia. St. Andrew's Church, Priceville, Ontario. Riverfield Church, Howick, Quebec. Winnipeg Somong Church, Winnipeg, Manitoba. St. John's Church, Windsor, Nova Scotia. Dorchester Church, Dorchester, Ontario. Westview Church, Toronto, Ontario. And Norval Church, Norval, Ontario. Report as a whole, moderator.
Thank you. The voting on the report as a whole, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to the Pension and Benefits Board. We have a notice of motion first.
Moderator, I am Matthew Reed from Presbytery of the Northwest. I move, seconded by Colleen Walker from Presbytery of Temiskaming, that the constitution of the pension plan be reconsidered. Thank you.
And we do vote on that. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Good morning. My name is Don Walcott, and I'm Chair of the Pension and Benefits Board of the Presbyterian Church. The mover and seconders for this report are Corey Stewart of the Presbytery of Cape Breton and Harry Curry of the Presbytery. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Just to repeat then, I can hear the echo. The movers and seconders for this report are Corey Stewart, who is from the Presbytery of Cape Breton, and Harry Curry, who's the Presbytery of the Northwest. Moderator, this report has several consent recommendations, and moderator, it is moved and seconded that recommendations number PAB 001, 002, 004, 005, 006, 007, and 008 be adopted by consent.
Thank you. I'm looking to see if anybody is moving to a microphone to remove one of these from that consent recommendation. Seeing none, let's vote then on this consent recommendation as you see it. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
This leaves one motion that needs a vote, and this is PAB 003, which has to do with the funding policy for the pension fund. You just approved a lot of numbers, a lot of increases in pension, a 3.9% increase in pensions, and also for the frozen pensions of the past. You may wonder how on earth the pension committee ever makes the decision and where the 3.9% comes from, whatever. I was thinking here that I'm in a university and I am a bit of a nerd, and if you want, I can give a long lecture on exactly how the economics and everything else works. But I suspect since this is the third day that maybe I will try to be brief, and then if people have questions, I'm happy to answer questions. But essentially, just to give you some feeling for the pension fund, it's about $350 million in size. That it has income from the assets of about $10 million. The contributions come from members and from the pensioners, from the active members. The active members are about $2 million. The other number for the employers, whatever, is about 8 million, just to give you some idea of the size of the pension fund. There is essentially two components. It's a very simple business model. One has to do with the contributions that the people pay, and the other one has to do with how do we decide on the CPI increase. And so if it's all in the report, it's actually an extremely well-written report. It was put together by representatives from both the pension board and the trustee board. The trustee board has affirmed this policy, i.e. is reviewed at their meeting, and they felt that they were in agreement with it. And so therefore, what I would like to do is just briefly say, for the contributions, the pension fund works where you figure out how much money is required to pay all the pensions for all the people into the future. That's what an actuary does. Then what you do is you figure out, knowing what the lump sum is required, then you have to get money from the investments, which is the income, and you have to get the contributions from the members and from the employers. And so what we do is we look at a number of factors, which are all listed in the report, which indicate what we have to take into consideration, whether we can increase, decrease the contribution rate, whether the pension funds have to be increased or decreased. So it is a formal review that we go through. Takes about an hour meeting to go through all these different things. This is like what's the demographics of the thing, how old are the people, what is their mortality rate, the asset liability balance, this type of thing. I will not get into it too long. However, this just indicates that we are looking at balancing between the money coming in and the assets that we have to pay the pensions out. The second thing, and the thing that you voted on today, is how did we decide on the 3.9% increase in pensions? I asked that question myself, and the actuary gave us the number of 3.9%, and I questioned it, so I went on Google, and when I went on Google, right there was this number that said the official number for CPI for the 2023 is 3.9%, so it confirmed to me that the number is correct. Now, how do we decide whether it is possible for us to even pay a CPI? Essentially, what is done is quite simple. We look at the liabilities, that is the pensions that we have to pay. We compare them to the assets in the investment fund. And then what we do is we use a discount rate. We discount the future pensions back to the current. And this is the complex thing. But we do discount it back. The thing that I'm saying is that over the last 2 years, we've been fortunate, and this year as well, interest rates have been high and the market has been good. That means the discount rate is high. That means that the value of the liabilities is low, and therefore you are in a winning situation. Last 2 years, this year, even better. Going concern was about 126%. So we had 26% more in assets than liabilities. If we wound it up right now, it'd be 116%. So a really, really good, strong position. Also, the government does not like us to stash away money in the pension fund. So if you have a big percentage like that, they say, use it and give it to people. Don't keep it and stash it away for yourselves. And so what we are done is we looked, and this year, because it was 26% for the going concern, we thought, geez, that is good. We have, as you will read in the report, that we have to not just look at over the next year, but over the years in the future, and that it will not harm the fund over the next future years. But we figured, okay, this year is a good year, and we can use 100% of the CPI to pay for the 3.9% increase. And so this is all outlined in your report. It is very well written. If you really are into this kind of thing and you're wondering about your pension fund, I would suggest that you read it. It's actually in English. So it's even, I think, better than my little explanation here. So please read it. That really completes the discussion on the fund. And so therefore, I guess if there's any questions, happy to any other questions. Otherwise, I turn it over to the moderator.
Are there questions on the report you just received? And then we will move to the recommendation. Do you need to address this separately? Or are we ready to?
I'm ready to vote, have it vote
Okay.
now. Yes.
All right. Microphone 1, then microphone 2. Microphone 1.
Harry Curry, Presbyterian of the Northwest. I'm a seconder, but I think something should be clarified. So I'm going to ask a question about, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if we pass this policy, it will mean that we don't have to come back. The policy will help guide the raises when we meet the guidelines. So it won't be something coming back to Assembly each year to vote on. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Thank you very much, Harry. That is an important thing. You're not going to have to listen to me getting up and trying to explain it to you every year. It will be, this is the funding policy that will be in the Constitution, and that we will follow all the rules from there on.
Okay, thank you. Microphone 2.
Thank you, Moderator Maureen Walter, East Toronto, and thank you to the Pension Board. Very grateful for your work. A tiny detail and omission on deceased pensioners. The Reverend Joanne Walter, who happened to be my mother, died January 30th, 2023. I think everybody was aware, but she's not on the list. So I thought I'd mention it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. I'm sure that will be corrected. Thank you, Maureen. Microphone 4.
Moderator, Peter Clausen from the Presbytery of Westminster. I have a question that has been on my conscience for a while, is that presbyteries in large cities like Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto receive the same 3.9 as those in a lesser, shall we say, smaller area when it comes to the cost of living. Cost of living in a center like Vancouver is almost twice as much as if you lived in Brandon, Manitoba. I wonder whether the pension board would consider ruling elders, or teaching elders rather, consider giving them an additional percentage. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to?
Yes. I think at this time, I don't think we would be able to increase the 1%, but I think it is a super question. And I really am going to bring it up at the next board. I think that is a very good one, whether we differentiate between the pensioners. At the moment, we treat all pensioners the same across Canada, but we will look into the implications, and we'll ask the actuaries what the implications, financial implications would be of assigning different amounts for places where the people live or where they're located. I think that's really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 3.
Moderator, if I am allowed to respond briefly to the proposal that was just made. Is there space for that, Moderator? Thank you. I'm radically opposed to that idea. Because I have served smaller places, is my ministry less valuable? Because I have lived in manses, is my ministry less valuable? Those who have served rural and remote their entire lives, is their ministry less valuable? If that's the church we're becoming, I don't know what we are.
Thank you. Other comments before we get to recommendation 3? Microphone 4.
Thank you, Moderator. Kent Buchanan, Presbytery of London. I was just curious, the indexing towards inflation, it looks like depending on the circumstances, we either meet it at 100% or we go part of the way if finances aren't as good. Is there a provision, like if you had a string of years where you're at 50%, say, and then you come on better times, is there any provision to catch up to kind of, or is that 50% of inflation going to kind of turn into a permanent, that will always carry forward as a permanent place we never got to, I guess, if that question makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
I seem to remember, and I would like to have to check with that particularly, but I do seem to remember that we had the ability to go back as well as go forward. If it was a really good year and nothing had happened, that we had the ability to go back as well as forward. But again, it all has to be financially sustainable. That really is, to make sure that the pensions are there for everybody all through.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no one else moving to a microphone. Commissioners, we're voting on PAB 003. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
I wonder if I could just make one more comment, please. I want to express my appreciation, my help, and my respect for the staff who work in pension and benefits. It is an extremely complex and difficult job. The calculation of the pensions, you have to get them actually right. The benefit questions are often very complex. The 3 people there, Patty, Leanne, and Perry, work extremely hard. And with Nicole as their supervisor, I just wanted to express how impressed I am and how fortunate I feel that we all are in having such a capable staff in that position. And that is my report. Thank you.
And we need to do the report as a whole. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay, we're going to consult about the agenda. You get a 1-minute break. Don't go far.
I know what it is too.
Commissioners, we are coming back together, please. Thank you for your patience. We, with the Business Committee, needed to confer about getting the business done in decently and in order. So we are on to the committee to nominate standing committees.
Moderator, I'm Marion Barkley, serving as the convener of the committee to nominate standing committees. The mover and seconder of this report are Colleen Walker, a member of the committee from the Presbytery of Temiskaming, and Corey Stewart from the Presbytery of Cape Breton. Moderator, we have just regular recommendations with this report. No amendments have been received by the committee, so the report as circulates stands for our consideration today. Once again, I would like to take this opportunity to express the appreciation of the committee to all nominating bodies and to all individuals who allowed their name to stand through the nomination process, whether they have been appointed to a standing committee or not. It takes intentionality to recruit potential candidates for all the various committees that are outlined before you there. And it can also be a very long process for nominees. So all of this behind the scenes commitment and work is really appreciated as the committee seeks to arrange the nominees on appropriate standing committees. I would also like to acknowledge that there are, for some individuals, this General Assembly marks the end of their term of service to a particular committee, and usually these have been, retiring members have been noted in the committee reports that we have been working through. Some have served on committees for up to 6 years, and the efforts, the gifts, and the commitment and dedication of all retiring committee members is really deeply appreciated. This year, the committee to nominate standing committees initiated a video project, and we had 4 representatives or conveners from standing committees just introducing their committee with a video that you could access on the church's website. These videos are designed to complement the terms of reference for each standing committee. They can be rather dry as a recruitment tool, although helpful in giving guidance as to the scope and mandate of each committee, which, as you've noted, is very different. It is the hope of the committee that the number of these videos will increase, and commissioners, you're invited to check in, and perhaps your heart has been warmed for a mandate or an opportunity to participate on one of the standing committees, and it allows for a tool in that discernment process in allowing one's name to stand. In presenting the full slate of nominees before you today, the committee has sought to be mindful of the church's directive of inclusivity and diversity reflected in committee membership. As the Spirit moves, this is indeed a work in progress, and in many ways relies heavily upon the nominations that the committee receives submitted from across the church by the end of February each year. The names of the nominees are before you, and so I will move to recommendation NOM 001, that the above list of the membership of the standing committees of the General Assembly for 2024-2025. So moved and seconded.
Thank you, commissioners. You have this recommendation in front of you. I'll wait to see if there's anybody moving to microphones. Appears not. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
And also recommendation NOM 002, that thanks be expressed to those members of a standing committee that concludes with this General Assembly.
Indeed. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried, and I will incorporate that into my prayer at the end of the Sederunt.
Thank you, moderator. In conclusion, just a reminder that the nomination process is an annual process. The committee does not move forward nominees that were not placed on standing committees. And so it's a reminder that the whole church together participates in the nomination process, and we encourage nomination forms to be completed and submitted for 2025 by February 28th of next year. Also, I would like to express the sincere thanks of the committee to Don Muir and Terry Lee Hamilton, Assembly Office staff, who have supported and resourced this committee. So thanks to them. Moderator, report as a whole.
Thank you very much. And the report as a whole, Commissioner. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Thank you.
And we are going to note that this is also Marion's final year as the convener of that committee, and let's give her our thanks. So we're going to move to our stated hour a little bit early. So we welcome you to the stage, and you will introduce our guests. Thank you.
Good morning, moderator. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here again this morning with you. It is my great honor this morning to introduce our guest, Father Bodad Halagio. He is a Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of Canada. So Father Bodad was born in Sewickley, Pennsylvania. He received the Bachelor of Arts degree from Theology of Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, where he was featured as the performer and choreographer with the Duquesne University Timbre Itzen. And as I always say when I teach, if you don't know it, say it like you own it. He met his wife, Tanya Pittesley, in Toronto, where they were married in 1984. He was an ordained priest in 1988 and has served parishes in Toronto from 1988 until 1995. And then he moved on to Hamilton in 1995 until 2005, and then into Oshawa, Ontario from 2008 until 2022. In addition to serving as the Chancellor of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Canada in Winnipeg from 2005 until 2008. Besides the pastoral responsibilities, he has served many church committees. He has led spiritual retreats and has offered talks and presentations for clergy and faithful of different Eastern Orthodox and other Christian churches in Canada and the USA. For Father Bodad has written hundreds of articles, both ecclesiastical and secular newspapers and magazines, and a collection of articles that have been published in 2009 by the Holy Dormition Montessori Press in Rives Junction, Michigan. More recently, several of his articles regarding the current ecclesiastical situation, regarding orthodoxy in Ukraine, have been published by the Orthodoxy site of Orthodox Studies program at Fordham University in New York. Father Bodad has completed his Master of Theological Studies degree at Trinity College in Toronto in 2021. specializing in Orthodox and Eastern Christian studies. His thesis, entitled Construal of the Autocephali, the Metropolo and Moscow Patriarch, and the Orthodox Church in America. Following this, he began doctoral studies at the Toronto School of Theology, and his research focuses on the history and polity of Eastern Orthodox in North America, with a special emphasis on the foundation and development of the Ukraine Orthodox Church in Canada. He has presented academic papers and has articles published in Europe and in North America, focusing upon theological challenges facing Eastern Orthodoxy in the globalized world, as well as a specific historical and theological challenges faced by the Ukrainian Orthodoxy, both in our homeland as well as the diaspora. So Father Bohdan is a faculty member at the Patriarchal Toronto Orthodox Theological Academy under the auspices of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of Canada, and he lives right close to here in Hamilton, Ontario. So please give him a warm welcome as he comes to present this morning.
Thank you. Moderator, dear Reverend Kim, brothers and sisters in Christ. Normally, a person gets up to speak and says, I'm very happy to be here. And I'm not, because if it wasn't for the war, I wouldn't probably be here, right? And none of us wants the war. So in one sense, you have to say, I'm not happy to be here. But I am very, very pleased and edified that you care enough to ask. And in that sense, I am very happy to be here. Hopefully, by the end of the talk, you will be happy that I'm here. From a Ukrainian perspective, this war is nothing new. For centuries, Ukraine and Ukrainians have experienced colonial exploitation and suffered institutional violence at the hands of the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, and the Russian Orthodox Church. What is taking place in Ukraine now is the same decolonization process which took place in Africa, Asia, South America, and Eastern Europe in the 19th and 20th centuries. Ukraine has been attempting to extricate itself from Russian imperial and colonial rule for over 100 years, and what is going on today is the result of Russia's refusal to let go. I'll begin this presentation with a quick historical presentation of Ukraine's political and ecclesiastical history from 988 through 2014, followed by a review of important church events between 2014 and 2024. After this, I'll address the Russian world ideology propagated by the Moscow Patriarchate, considerations in regard to the human cost of the war, and offer some theological reflections, then proceed to my conclusion. The Eastern Orthodox Church is comprised of a commonwealth of independent or autocephalous churches. The Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople is regarded as the first among equals of all Orthodox patriarchates and possesses a quote-unquote precedence of honor among all the other Orthodox churches, with historical and canonical responsibility for maintaining and coordinating the activity of all Orthodox churches. There are two Orthodox churches in Ukraine. The Orthodox Church of Ukraine, or OCU, was granted autocephaly, which means simply church independence, by the Patriarchate of Constantinople in 2019. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church, or UOC, was, and still to some degree still is, a constituent part of the Moscow Patriarchate. And please note this small but very important difference. The Orthodox Church in Ukraine, OCU, refers to the new autocephalous church, while the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, or UOC, refers to the Moscow affiliated church. It's amazing how many Ukrainians get that wrong. A survey of Eastern Orthodoxy in Ukraine from 988 to 2014 in 2 minutes or less. Vladimir, or Volodymyr the Great, was the Grand Prince of the territories currently comprising Ukraine, Belarus, and Western Russia, which at the time were known as Kiev and Rus. He accepted Christianity and was baptized by emissaries from Constantinople in approximately 988 AD. The city of Kiev was sacked by the Mongols in 1240, which resulted in its bishop moving north to Vladimir and eventually to Moscow, though the church in Kiev...
Slow down a tiny bit.
Yes.
Dense history, we want to get it.
Okay. The city of Kiev was sacked by the Mongols in 1240, which resulted in its bishop moving north to Vladimir and eventually to Moscow, though the church in Kiev continued to exist as a metropolitan see under Constantinople. From the 14th through the 17th centuries, the territory of contemporary Ukraine was part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, which left Moscow as the richest and most influential Orthodox center. In 1589, at the behest of the Tsar, the Ecumenical Patriarch recognized the Church of Moscow as a patriarchate, recognizing as a result its autocephalous or independent status as well. At about the same time, in 1596, due to the weak position of the Patriarchate of Constantinople under Turkish rule, a majority of the Orthodox bishops of the Kievan Metropolia within the Polish-Lithuanian Republic signed a union agreement with the Roman Catholic Church, thereby coming under the jurisdiction of the Pope of Rome. This Uniate, or Eastern Catholic Church, became the favored church in Catholic Poland. The Orthodox Church was suppressed, and the clergy and faithful who remained faithful to orthodoxy were persecuted. Peter Mohila, who served as the Orthodox Metropolitan of Kiev from 1632 till 1648, greatly strengthened the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, with the academy he founded in Kiev becoming the preeminent educational institution in the entire Orthodox world. At this time, a Ukrainian Cossack state existed on the borderlands between the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the Crimean Tatar horde. Bogdan Khmelnytsky, the leader of the Ukrainian Cossacks, signed an agreement with Muscovy in 1654 in order to counter Polish aggression. This was followed in 1686 by an agreement between the Constantinople and Moscow, whereby responsibility for ordaining the Metropolitan of Kiev was transferred from Constantinople to Moscow, with the proviso that all other aspects of the life of the Kievan Church, that is, the right to elect its own primate and bishops, the Kiev Metropolitan's privilege as the exarch of the ecumenical throne, his representative, were to remain unchanged. The Muscovite state expanded greatly between the 16th and 18th centuries, and you can see that little green thing there towards the left, which is Muscovy, which is how it started and how it eventually spread. In 1721, Peter the Great abolished the Patriarchate, and the Russian Orthodox Church became de facto a department of state, led not by a bishop, but by a holy synod consisting of bishops and lower clergy, presided over by a civil official, the Oberprokuror, in effect, the Tsar's eyes, ears, and mouth at synodal meetings. As more and more territories were integrated into the empire, the Orthodox Churches extant upon those territories were incorporated into the Russian Church, with the concomitant imposition of Russian linguistic, musical, and liturgical practices. This ecclesiastical Russification was imposed upon the Orthodox Church in Ukraine as well. A movement for church reform in Russia began in the late 19th century, culminating in the Great Moscow Council of 1917-1918, which restored the Patriarchate and embraced a more conciliar approach to church governance. Due to the Bolshevik Revolution and subsequent separation of church and state, the movement for Ukrainian church independence gained new strength, and an autocephalous constituency coalesced in Ukraine, whose main goals were the use of vernacular Ukrainian in the liturgy, the restoration of Ukrainian liturgical practices, and independence from Moscow, resulting in the establishment of the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church in 1921. By 1930, this church had been liquidated by the Soviet authorities, following which the Holodomor, the genocidal famine of 1932-33, which claimed between 4 and 7 million victims, was perpetrated against the Ukrainian people by the Soviet regime. As a result of the Bolshevik attempt to eradicate religion, by 1939, the Russian Orthodox Church was on the brink of extinction. In order to aid the war effort, in 1943, Stalin decreed the rehabilitation of the Russian Orthodox Church and permitted the election of a patriarch. The Russian Orthodox Church obtained a limited amount of governmental tolerance and patronage in return for its loyalty to and support for the Soviet regime. The politics of the reconstituted patriarchate reflected the politics of the Soviet Union. For example, the Moscow Patriarchate took an active role in the suppression of the Ukrainian Catholic or so-called Unia Church in 1946. And following the accession of the Russian Orthodox Church to the World Council of Churches in 1961, it consistently parroted the Soviet line in regard to international relations and defended the USSR against accusations of religious persecution, human rights violations, etc. While state authorities had not been able to completely eradicate the church in the Soviet Union, their attempt to do so was nonetheless very successful. Nathaniel Davis, in his magisterial book, A Long Walk to Church, A Contemporary History of Russian Orthodoxy, notes that by the late 1980s, a society functioning without God seems to have come close to becoming a reality, resulting in a de-Christianized wasteland in all too much of Soviet society. He goes on to suggest that the church's inability to cultivate this wasteland was due to its lack of active missionary work, a lack of desire on the part of the clergy to work collaboratively with the laity, and lay distrust of the clergy due to the clergy's real and or perceived corruption and collaboration with the Soviet and post-Soviet regimes. In 1989, as a result of the policy of glasnost and the relaxation of restrictions on religious life in the Soviet Union, Ukrainian Orthodox clerics who realized that their faithful would not remain in a church affiliated with Moscow left the Russian Orthodox Church and organized a new Ukrainian autocephalous Orthodox Church. In 1992, following the Moscow Patriarchate's refusal to grant independence to its Ukrainian parishes, a parallel independent Ukrainian Orthodox Church was formed in Kyiv called the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Kievan Patriarchate. As a result, 3 major Orthodox bodies existed in Ukraine: the Ukrainian Orthodox Church under the Moscow Patriarchate, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Kievan Patriarchate, and the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church. The differences between the Russian, so-called Russian and Ukrainian churches encompass 3 main markers: language, culture, and polity. The Ukrainian bodies emphasize the use of vernacular Ukrainian as opposed to Church Slavonic in the liturgical services. Culture, including music, vestments, icons, and Ukrainian as opposed to Russian liturgical practices and traditions, was the second notable difference. The third, polity, which in particular envisioned an expanded role for lower clergy and laity in church governance and administration, was espoused within the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church, while the Kievan Patriarchate tended to follow the same synodal episcopal governance model as the Ukrainian Orthodox Church under Moscow, which put all power in the hands of the bishops. By 2014, there were approximately 1,200 parishes aligned with the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church, approximately 4,000 parishes aligned with the Kievan Patriarchate, and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate counted approximately 12,000 parishes. It's worthy of note that at this time, approximately 1/3 of the parishes of the Moscow Patriarchate were located physically in Ukraine. Before moving on to ecclesiastical events between 2014 and 2022, I'd like to offer another quote from Nathaniel Davis, A Long Walk to Church. Davis was a member of the United States Diplomatic Corps who spent decades living in Russia both before and after the fall of the Soviet Union, and was personally acquainted with the life of the church from the lowest to the highest levels, a person both knowledgeable about and sympathetic to the Russian Orthodox Church. He wrote the following in 2003. If the Moscow Patriarchate should play its cards astutely enough in the political breakaway of Ukraine, It might be able to prevent a hostile ecclesiastical separation. It will be necessary, however, to infuse the present autonomous Ukrainian Orthodox Church, still part of the patriarchal establishment, with the substance of independence and ultimately to grant autocephaly. The other alternative, of course, would be the ultimate political reincorporation of Ukraine into a restored Great Russian state, a bloody enterprise. In 2014, following the February Revolution of Dignity, so-called, at the Maidan Square in Kyiv, the Russian Federation illegally occupied Crimea and invaded eastern Ukraine. Within months, on July 5th, Metropolitan Volodymyr Sabodan, who had served as the primate of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, the Russian-affiliated body, since 1991, fell asleep in the Lord, and his successor, Metropolitan Onufry, was a Moscow-leaning cleric. And from that time, the leading circles of the UOC took on a more decidedly pro-Moscow orientation. While the independent Ukrainian Orthodox churches supported Ukraine's struggle against Russian aggression, Patriarch Kirill of Moscow characterized the initial Russian invasion of 2014 as, quote, an armed conflict which broke out in the Donbas region, whose population was defending their right to speak the Russian language, demanding respect for their historical and cultural tradition, unquote. And the Ukrainian Orthodox Church promulgated this same narrative, characterizing the conflict as a civil war, which was instigated by, quote unquote, schismatics and uniates who wished to expel or destroy the canonical Orthodox Church. The initial Russian invasion of 2014 brought with it the persecution of non-Russian Orthodox religious bodies. The Center for Civil Liberties and International Partnership for Human Rights, in its report of April 2015 entitled, When God Becomes the Weapon, Persecution Based on Religious Beliefs in the Armed Conflict in Eastern Ukraine, noted that, quote, non-Orthodox religious believers living in the conflict-affected areas of Ukraine are being subjected to widespread and systematic attack by the rebel groups, and that persecution based on religious belief appears to be part of a well-coordinated policy and has a strong Orthodox connotation, unquote. The report goes on to say that only the believers of the Moscow Patriarchy Orthodoxy are free from persecution. The Orthodox religion is used as an ideological foundation of state building by the rebel groups, and anything that is non-Russian Orthodox is seen as alien. The essence of the project of the Donetsk People's Republic is the establishment of a sovereign, independent state based on the restoration of a unified cultural and civilizational space of Russian world on the basis of its traditional religious, social, cultural, and moral values, with the prospect of becoming a part of Greater Russia, unquote. The report goes on to note that the scale and magnitude of the attacks that the civilian population is subject to in the southeastern parts of Ukraine is sufficient to qualify them as crimes against humanity as defined in international law, and include instances of murder, torture, forcible transfer, imprisonment, and severe deprivation of liberty, as well as the seizure and destruction of places of worship, forcing believers to flee or to practice their religion in secret. And keep in mind, that's 2015. The attitude of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church associated with the Moscow Patriarchate towards the war was physically manifested when, on May 8, 2015, during a special ceremony in the Ukrainian parliament honoring fallen Ukrainian military personnel,